Hi everyone, how's it going? It's Agnieszka from 5 Minute Language. Welcome to my channel. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. It really means a lot to me. So today's video is all about how to learn a foreign language in 6 months. Are you ready? Let's get started. So before we start, I just want to add 2 caveats to this video, 2 disclaimers. So the first one is, what it means to learn a language will be a different thing for different people. So what I'm talking about here when I say to learn a language, I'm talking about being able to communicate, being able to, have conversations with people, meet new people, and enjoy written and spoken language as well. So being able to watch a show in the language you're learning, or maybe read a novel, or read some news, read a blog, watch a vlog, that kind of stuff. So the second disclaimer is that 6 months can be a short time, but for some people it can be a very long time. So it will depend on your personal situation. Obviously, if somebody is working full-time and they've got young children, they will not be able to devote as much time to learning as a person who is retired, who doesn't have any caring responsibilities. So those 2 types of people will progress at very different rates. And obviously there's things like what other languages you know and how experienced you are with learning a foreign language. So 6 months is just a random amount of time, but I'm going to tell you the different things you can do, and hopefully that will really accelerate your language learning progress. So let's start with the first tip. So the first thing is learning pronunciation. When I start learning any foreign language, pronunciation is something that I do straight away. I need to know how to pronounce all the different letters and letter combinations, but also how the accent works, how the stress works, and how the intonation works. So all these different things might sound quite trivial, but they're very important, because once you know the rules and once you can actually pronounce the language, it will be so much easier for you to learn vocabulary, because sometimes if you don't know how to say a word, that can be a real blocker, a real obstacle for you. So you will be able to learn vocabulary more quickly straight away if you know pronunciation. Another thing I would say is that you should not just learn about how to pronounce things, but also try saying things all the time. So speaking from day one, to me, that means basically things like saying everything out loud, everything that you learn, looking at examples of sentences, saying them out loud, and also repeating after native speakers. So whenever you're listening to a recording, pause it, repeat it, and that way you're enriching your pronunciation. Okay, the next thing is learning about sentence structure. So learning about how you build sentences in the language. So if you want to speak a language, you need to know how to build a sentence. So you need to know how the structure works. Learn the pronouns, so things like I, you, he, she, and so on. And then learn about conjugation patterns for the verbs in the language you're learning. So that will basically give you a head start, because once you learn a new verb, you will be able to put together a sentence straight away. Once you know what the structure is, and once you know how the conjugation pattern works, and you know the pronouns, that's it. That's all you need to put a sentence together. Learn the most common 10 verbs, because that will really allow you to say a lot of things. If you know the basic 10 verbs in the language you're learning, you will be able to use them very flexibly. And sometimes you don't need the accurate translation of something that you need to say. You can just kind of use a verb that you already know that's very similar, and people will kind of get the gist of what you're saying. So start with the most common 10 verbs and then learn them in the order of how frequently they're used. So you can just look up a frequency list online. If you're learning Spanish, look up a Spanish word frequency list, and you will be able to see those verbs that are the most used in Spanish. So I definitely recommend that method, because that will really allow you to make the most impact with the language learning that you're doing. Okay, the next one is about learning adjectives and adverbs. So you need some verbs to build your sentences, but you also need adjectives and adverbs to be able to describe the world around you, to describe how things are. So adjectives are the words that describe nouns. So for example, if I say a comfortable sofa or a yellow sofa, they are adjectives that describe what the sofa is like. Adverbs are words that describe verbs. So for example, if I say I run quickly or I run slowly, quickly and slowly are the adverbs that describe how I run. So that gives you additional context, additional information, And learning adjectives and adverbs allows you to express yourself more accurately and to understand a lot more about what people are saying. For example, if somebody is telling you about their running, you won't know how it really went if they tell you and you don't understand the adverbs or adjectives. So learning that will really allow you to accelerate your progress. Okay, the next thing you need to learn are nouns. So nouns are basically all the different things that you talk about. So for example, I got a new bike. The bike is the noun. So again, I would learn those nouns in the order of frequency. So I would look up a frequency list and just make sure that I'm learning the nouns that are used most frequently in the language. Because there is no point really learning things by categories, such as learning animals or learning plants in the language, because you are very unlikely to be using those words. And when you're using some apps, that's kind of how vocabulary is presented to you. So you focus on different animals in the language, but when are you likely to say giraffe? If you've only got 6 months and you're treating this as a challenge and you really want to be able to communicate with people in the language you're learning, then definitely focus on frequency lists and make sure that you kind of work down those lists, because that will really have the most impact. So if you want to learn a language in 6 months, you need to be learning a lot of words. And I mean a lot of words. But having said that, it's quality over quantity. So with every new word that you're learning, you need to be able to use it in context if you want the learning to be meaningful. So look up examples of sentences, try to understand the different kind of word combinations that word goes into. Do a lot of reading, because that will allow you to see those words in context, in practice, and it will give you a better idea of how they are used in a natural way. You can use spaced repetition for memorizing the words. I've got a separate video about that in which I talk about what spaced repetition is and how it works. But essentially you can use apps for that, or you can use just a normal notebook. I personally just use a notebook where I write things down. Spaced repetition is basically something that allows you to remember words and not forget them after a period of time. So make sure you check out the video I linked to in the description box if you want to know more about it. So the next thing is reading. You should be reading a lot from the start, even if you don't understand a lot. So try to find some simplified texts to start with. You can use children's books or children's short stories, for example. And definitely focus on reading from day one. I know it can be frustrating because you won't understand everything yet, but the idea is to familiarize yourself with some of the words that you do know, how they work in sentences, how you can use them yourself to sound natural. I definitely recommend highlighting things and writing things down. I personally like working with paper, so if you can print things out, highlight them and make notes and then review those highlighted phrases and words. Practice speaking, so you can read and you can speak, you can say things out loud. You can either read out loud or you can just practice saying sentences containing the words that you're learning. So speaking is something that you should definitely incorporate, like I said before, from the start. So saying things out loud, looking up examples of sentences, saying them, and then trying to make your own sentences as well. The next one is about listening. So when I talk about listening, I mean listening with intention. So just listening doesn't really work. You need to be listening actively. So set yourself a task for listening. So you can either use kind of ready-made listening materials that will kind of guide you through a task, or you can do it yourself. So you can, for example, watch a short clip of an interview or a vlog, and then set yourself the task of, for example, summarizing what has been said, or just, writing down 5 new words that you heard. Listening with intention is a lot more effective than just listening, because you've got a task and you actually just focus on completing that task rather than distracting yourself with all the different words that you're hearing and you're not understanding. So when it comes to speaking, I definitely recommend that you speak to yourself a lot, and that you maybe just speak to yourself for the first 1 or 2 months of learning. So if 6 months is your target, then maybe use the first month or 2 on just speaking to yourself. Some people recommend speaking from day 1 and arranging a language exchange. I personally would find it a little bit intimidating, and I think, I would want to build up some confidence before I have a conversation with somebody else. Also, if you're learning a language from scratch, you might not be able to say a lot. So speaking to yourself a little bit every day will help you build that confidence, and also, whilst you're building your skills and your vocabulary, and then have proper conversations with people from the 3rd month. So the final thing I'm going to say is that 6 months is not a very long time at all, even if you've got all the time in the world to learn a language. Learning a language takes a long time, and it takes, a lot of effort, but you can definitely achieve some big milestones in 6 months' time. So what I would definitely recommend is goal setting. I've got a separate video about setting smart goals for language learning, and I definitely recommend that you watch it. I'm going to link it in the description. So you need to be setting smart goals, especially short term, because 6 months is such a short time. You need some goals for every week, I think, for every week and every month, and also reviewing those goals and seeing what you're doing well, seeing where you need more challenge is also very important. So make sure that at the end of every week you ask yourself, have I met those goals? Are there any areas where I'm doing particularly well or particularly badly? Is the level of challenge right? Am I learning easy things, or should I maybe up the level of challenge a little bit? So like I said, learning a language in 6 months is definitely a challenge. If you want to try it, give it a go, and hopefully the tips I've just given you will help you do that. So make sure you subscribe to my channel and give me a comment as well, telling me about what language you're hoping to learn and why. And I'll see you next time. Bye!